Hello everybody, Jose Rodriguez here. One of the most constant questions I get often has to do with people owning a printer and realizing that they have to go out of town for lengths of time that will be detrimental to the printer's health. Now you have two choices. Set up a program such as Qimage One if you have a Mac, and have it run a purge cycle. This is a very intricately designed series of lines that will then exercise every one of your cartridges, every one of your colors, every one of your channels, a certain number of hours, every few hours or every few days, whatever you choose to set it for. It has full scheduling feature. So that's one way to do it, but that means you have to own that program. So what if you do not? What if you're just going to go away, say, for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months at a time? That's a whole different scenario. See, the purge printing or schedule purge printing feature of Qimage is really meant for no more than a couple of weeks. I mean, be realistic. You have to leave the printer on, you have to leave your computer on, and you have to leave Qimage running and have that scheduler activated. So while you are gone, and of course have enough ink in the printer, have enough paper in the printer, and remember, if it's a Canon printer, every 60 hours is going to run that cleaning cycle. So you have to have enough of everything available while you are gone. So what if you just want to completely shut down your printer for a number of months, and dare I say even a year? Well, there are some printers, and depending on your environmental conditions, that will probably allow you to get away with just simply turning it off, crossing your fingers, and coming back a year later, cranking it back up, and after a cleaning cycle that I'm sure is going to throw automatically, regardless of make, EPSON and Canon will do that regardless. Maybe you can run a nozzle check after that, and maybe you can have a relatively good result that will be solved after a couple of cleaning cycles after that. Well, there are other ways to approach this. If you already know you're going to be away for a year, say someone in the military, and they're going to go to Europe or the Orient, and they're going to be gone for 2 to 3 years. How do I prep a printer for long-term storage? Well, if it's a Canon printer, it's quite easy, but it will cost you some money. And it depends on the model whether you want to do this or not. Remove the print head. That's it. When you come back, get a new print head and start all over again. That is the best and most reliable way to make sure your printer will be in operating condition when you come back. Of course, many of you will say, no way, I'm not going to do that. So how can you do that? Well, how can you get away with that? Well, you could always flush the print head, but that's an iffy proposition because the process is a little bit invasive and you may damage the electronics of the print head. So it's not something that I would recommend. What could you do then? Well, one way that you can possibly get away with this is to own a printer like the Pro-100, get a set of refillable cartridges. You don't really need high quality for this particular situation, or a set of modified cartridges that you may already own, nice pristine ones like these. Prepare enough of that rejuvenation fluid. Go back to my video and you will see the formula for that. It is made with distilled water, alcohol, denatured alcohol or isopropyl alcohol actually, and some glycerin. Glycerin/glycerol. Glycerol is what we call it in the lab. Glycerin is what the drugstore calls it. Glycerin is what makes that liquid able to coat the inside of your print head and not dry it up, in other words. Yes, so here's what you would do. Fill a set of these cartridges with that rejuvenation fluid, pop them in your printer, After you remove the regular ink cartridges, go ahead and seal the vent. Go ahead and put a clip on the bottom, stick them in a plastic Ziploc bag, put them away. You may want them later. They may or may not be good. You know, I'm talking about a year here. So try anyway. Install the cartridges refilled with the rejuvenation fluid and run cleaning cycles until your nozzle check is perfectly clear, as if nothing printed. You could, if you want to, add a little bit of cyan or magenta dye to your mixture, and that will allow you to see your nozzle check that is indeed printing something. And it should be all the same color. All the channels should be exactly the same color, whatever amount of dye you added to that solution. Just a small amount is all you need. Run that rejuvenation fluid until the printhead is completely flushed. Turn it off at the button, unplug it, load that unit inside a plastic trash bag, tape it up, and leave it in a cool area of your house. Nothing too hot. Some people will leave the air conditioner off. Well, it just depends on what your conditions are. When you come back, again, you may have to replace that printhead, but if you're lucky, the fluid will have maintained that printhead perfectly unclogged. At this point, you load your ink cartridges back on, run a couple of cleaning cycles followed by nozzle checks, and when you are printing full ink again, luckily that will be the case, you'll be ready to go again. Or, like I said before, you may have to install a new printhead, and that will actually get you back to almost new condition anyway. Now, EPSON cartridges. By the way, this will not really work for this. This will not really work for the Pro 1 either. This will only work on printers that have cartridges that ride on the printhead carriage, so that you can quickly flush out the ink, quickly replace it with that particular fluid, which will then maintain your printhead in good condition until you are back from whatever it is you needed to tend to. Now let's talk about EPSON printers. EPSON printers have totally different printheads. They are not user replaceable unless you're a service tech. You could do the same thing, but it's a little bit more difficult on printers such as this. I'll use Canon as an example. Stationary cartridges, miles and miles of ink lines, internal compartments, printhead dampers, all of them full of ink. You would have to literally do a complete flush of the system. You will lose a ton of ink, which you will then have to replace to push out the liquid you filled those internal compartments with. So yeah, it's an expensive process, and one that I just, don't recommend. If you have one of these, please have someone come over every week and use it. At least, that way it will kind of keep itself going. I hope they know about printers, by the way. It could be worse than good if they do not. So on a EPSON printer, again, the same thing. EPSON refillable cartridges, but this time I would recommend an actual product. piezo flush. Now, piezo flush is not cheap, but it is intended specifically for long-term storage of printers. In other words, prepping a printer for storage. You would use piezo flush. Secondarily, it also acts as a really good unclogger, by the way. But you would do the same thing. You would fill up your cartridges, flush out the complete system until you are printing only nozzle checks that contain pink. Why pink? Because that's what the solution's color is. It's a clear solution, but it does not evaporate, so it will maintain everything in great shape while you are away. I would go ahead and leave the cartridges in place once you have flushed the system. Make sure you have enough ink left in. Make sure all your vent holes are plugged. The same thing with the Canon. Make sure that all your vents are covered up before you leave. Remember, you fill these with the so-called rejuvenation fluid. It is made out of alcohol and water. It will evaporate. So make sure you seal that vent. Okay. When you come back, make sure you unseal it, okay? Or you will have problems. With these, make sure that the plug, there's a little area here for a plug, a vent plug. Make sure you put that vent plug in place after you have flushed out all of the ink. The same thing here. I already have a vent plug installed. These are for the R3000. The same type of cartridge would be for the P600, okay? So again, the same procedure, except this time you're using a proprietary product that actually is intended for that purpose. I would not use it on a Canon printer because I don't know whether it is compatible with Canon print heads. So I wouldn't want to put my foot in my mouth and tell you guys to use piezo flush when they may not be suitable for your Canon printers. And that is it. When you come back, again, it's going to cost you money because you have to run that fluid out, push it out with what? With ink. Expensive ink if you're using OEM, okay? If you have internal waste ink pads, that's going to cost a lot of filling. Whether it's clear fluid or not, it's still considered waste, okay? With something like this, with something like the P800, any of the EPSON large format printers, they have user replaceable waste ink containers or cartridges. No problem. You just have to have several of them to allow you to, perform this exchange. Yeah. You know what the best option is? Sell it. Sell it, and when you come back, buy a new printer. But if you are stubborn like me, I would come up with a way to save my printer while I am away. Again, Pro-100, Pro-10, oh, I just buy a new print head. Don't even bother. Unless I'm really, really one of those people that needs to have their finger on every little aspect of the printer. This one, oh my gosh, I hope I never have to go away. That would be a nightmare. I would give it away. I would sell it to someone for very little money because I know when I come back, I'm going to have to buy a new one because this is just going to be, it's just economically unfeasible to do this kind of a process unless you're refilling and refilling with cheap inks, which you would not be using on a printer such as this anyway. You see what I mean? So it's just not worth it. So long story short, you know me, I'm long-winded. Long story short, short number of weeks, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, Qimage. Print something every 2 or 3 days through Qimage. Come back, chances are your printer will be just fine, especially a Canon printer with its, pre-empted cleaning cycles. It'll be fine. EPSON printers, 95% it'll be fine. You might need a couple of cleaning cycles, maybe no more than one, to get your printer back in line and printing 100%. More than months, yeah, that gets a little touchy at that point. piezo flush works beautifully on EPSON printers, pretty much guaranteed. Perform this process that I just kind of walked you through. Not so much for the Canons, okay? So again, I may not have the answer everyone was wanting to hear, okay? The perfect solution for me going off for 1 year somewhere and then coming back and having that printer give me a big welcome hug when I get home and say, hey, Daddy, I'm printing perfectly. Thanks to you. No, it may not work, okay? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. All right, that is it. Thank you so much again. Subscribe as always. Click that little bell, ding dong, and tell it to notify you when I upload something new. That is it for now. Again, it's all about commitment to your printers. It's not something to be taken lightly because it does require a lot of commitment. And that's, I think, is the main thing that people kind of forget to think about. Not to mention all of the other side items that you need to successfully be able to print beautiful color prints and black and white, of course. Monochrome, that is. That's enough. Happy printing, everybody. Bye-bye.